If you have a kid going into kindergarten and you have not yet done it, please do yourself a favor and look at the school calendar and plan out your year, because it's very, very important to be aware of how many days off your kids are going to have, how many half days they're going to have, because these things will sneak up on you. And I think when parents go from having kids in daycare to having kids in public school, it's a little bit of a shock, because when you're a working parent with kids in daycare, for example, you get very, very used to a strict schedule, right? Your daycare is probably open from 7 to 6 or 8 to 5, whatever it might be, and it's pretty consistent. They take off federal holidays, they are closed for the big holidays, but otherwise they're open and you go to work. But when your kids get to public school is not daycare. And a lot of people are taken by surprise at how many days off there are for their kids, and they don't really know how to plan logistically. Because not only is it very expensive to plan for care as your kids get older, it is also very time consuming, because school for school age kids, say you have a kindergartner, is typically from like 8:30 to 2:30 or 9 to 3, and parents need to be at work for 9 and they definitely don't get home at 3. And so they need a combination of before school care, after school care, and then for all of the half days and no school days, they need other forms of care. So whether that's a program that your town runs, that's a camp, it's a nanny that you have on call. There are so many things to plan for. And it costs a lot of money. I think people don't realize after school care for my kids is about $1,000 per month per child. So that's not much less than daycare. And then you add on things like summer camp every single summer. It becomes quite expensive and logistically difficult to navigate. And I feel like we don't do a good job of preparing parents for what that looks like, right? We often tell parents, whoa, your kid is going to kindergarten. You're paying your last daycare bill. Like, you made it. You hit the light at the end of the tunnel. This is the good stuff. And then these parents are shocked to find out that actually between after school care and before school care and all of the random days off and summer vacation, it's not much less expensive than daycare, and it's a logistical nightmare to coordinate, and people are really caught off guard by this. And so I think it's very important that we talk about this, because also for women, we often tell women, especially when they have young kids, you know, if you're going to leave the workforce, now is the time. Do it while they're little, and when they get to kindergarten, you can go back to work. But logistically and financially, it's often very difficult for women to do that, because when kids get to kindergarten, the calendar is much crazier. It is just as expensive, and logistically, it's very difficult to coordinate and isn't really conducive to having a 9-to-5 job or a rigid, like, in-office job. And so I like to talk about these things, and I tell all of my friends about it, because I was caught very off guard by this experience when I went from daycare to kindergarten, and I just didn't realize what it was going to look like. And so if you have kids in daycare, even if you're newly in daycare, I think it's important just to be aware of what comes after. What kind of care you're going to need when they get to school? What does the school calendar look like? Does your district do half-day Wednesdays every single week? Like, what are you working with? It is so important to know ahead of time so you can prepare not just mentally, but logistically and financially as well.